exciting. We're all excited to hear from you as well. We are going to be featuring some stories of our FCNL supporters as well. So you'll hear some folks, people you know, and we've got people joining. Hi, Deborah and Ken. I know that is a real background, right? That's amazing. You're right there. Thank you for joining.
It's a real picture we took.
That's a beautiful place. Thanks for taking away a second away from the beach to join. Folks are just introducing themselves in the chat. Please do that as we get started. And let's see, we've got people coming in. You can say your name, where you're joining from. Oh my gosh, there are 14 people in Whittier. That is fantastic that are joining from our West Coast hub. We're so thrilled you're with us. That's awesome. That is awesome. Hi, Richard. Good to see you. We've got people joining from all over the country. Freya from Virginia, Susan. This is great. Carolyn from Colorado. Bill from Vermont. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Gail from Santa Rosa. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Rich and Marion from Minnesota. We are so glad you're here. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Amelia Kegan to get us started. Welcome, friends.
Hello, friends. It is so good to be with you this afternoon. Wonderful to see so many familiar faces on this call. Welcome to our session about preparing for the 119th Congress. So today is November 14th. We have a little less than 2 months before the new Congress is sworn in, a little more than 2 months before the presidential inauguration. So basically, we have 2 months to prepare. But we've actually been preparing for some time now. We've been doing scenario planning in our teams, in coalitions, calls. So I will say we weren't completely flat-footed after last Tuesday. So I'm gonna start by, I'm just gonna give a quick overview of sort of some piece of the legislative landscape for the first 100 days of the next Congress, a little bit about our strategy, cover just a couple points, and then you're all going to go into breakout groups to hear more specifics on some of the different policy and issue areas and ways in which we will be working in the coming year. So just to start out, looking at the 119th Congress, we now know we have a Republican trifecta. And we know that they are going to come out of the gate looking to pass a big bill under reconciliation. They're calling it a tax bill. And as you probably remember, budget reconciliation is this fast track budget procedure that would allow them to avoid the filibuster in the Senate. Republican leadership is calling this a tax bill, but it's really tax plus. And the bill would include extending the 2017 tax cuts, which we know made the tax code even more regressive, exacerbated economic inequality, the racial wealth gap, further perpetuated the concentration of wealth in this country, which has been undermining our democracy, adding to the country's growing deficits and debt, and then probably add on more tax cuts, right? Not just extending those that are expiring. But it won't just be tax, right? They're going to be adding immigration provisions, climate provisions, and probably attempts to cut programs like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Medicaid. They're going to move this fast and try and pass it within the first 100 days. Now, the margins for this and all coming legislation that we're going to see remain very, very tight in the House and the Senate. And our strategy is really going to have to focus a lot of energy on those moderate Republicans who are in swing districts. So those moderate members of the House and the Senate, especially those who are going to be in tight races in 2026, and new members of Congress as well. These are all going to be really, really important and a key part of our strategy going forward. Now, the Republican majority, they're going to need their caucus to be fully unified behind this legislation, and that is a tall order. If you remember 2021, Democrats struggled to be able, and they were not able to pass the Build Back Better legislation for this reason. And if we look at the past few years, we've seen a pattern, right? The far right will push bills way to the extreme, refusing to support anything that doesn't meet their very, very kind of high, uncompromising standards. The moderates then balk at this. And what has happened time and again on must-pass legislation like spending bills is because these margins are so tight and because the far reaches of the Republican Party won't compromise, the speaker has actually had to go to Democrats to get votes to get things to pass. Now, I don't see Thune or Johnson getting Democratic votes on this bill, although they might try. But the point is, it will be hard to get all Republicans in agreement. Now, there will be tremendous pressure on them to fall in line and vote for this bill, but we really have some opportunities to block and at least mitigate the damage. So the other big shift to our work in January, which I know all of us are thinking, especially with all these announcements, you just pick up your phone, you see another announcement coming out around cabinet nominations, is the executive branch, right? We now have an authoritarian president who will likely make severe attempts to further degrade our democracy. Many people around him last time who provided guardrails are not there this time around. And given the recent Supreme Court decisions and the election results, he's likely to feel emboldened, and many Republican members of Congress are going to be reluctant to stand up against him. As you all know, Trump has been saying he wants to implement mass deportations, and we know that this is more than just efforts to deport people without documentation. It also extends to people who have temporary protected status, deferred enforcement departure, others ending asylum, return of the Muslim ban, all of these things. This would have, I don't need to tell you, devastating effects on millions of families, communities across the country, massive repercussions. And it's not just immigrant communities that are threatened, right? The transgender community, people of color, there is a long list that we could go through. So we're going to have to really focus on resistance and mitigating the damage from the executive branch at a new level. And some of that is using different levers of legislative advocacy, working with our champions, pressuring moderates, see where we have avenues to push back and act strategically, such as new legislative tactics that will later support litigation efforts. We'll be kind of re-upping our efforts that we did in the last Trump administration, submitting comments on proposed regulations that are coming out of Trump's agencies to both slow down the process and support forthcoming litigation. And then there will be other efforts, less FCNL's work, but still critical, that play out at the state and local level through direct action, civil disobedience, and faith communities are going to have a critical role to play in that as well. And then the other piece is we are in coalition and we have strong partnerships with many groups who are on the front lines and doing the work on the ground in communities that are most at risk. And we will be sharing resources that you and others you know could benefit. Despite all of these threats, there are still going to be some opportunities, and not just the opportunity to stop really bad policies, which is a huge win when we're able to do that, but also maybe advance some good things. And along those lines, I'll just conclude before we move into our breakout rooms, is just a reminder of some of the important wins we got in the last Trump administration, right? Major criminal legal reform in this First Step Act, opening Pell Grants to incarcerated students, the Eli Wiesel Genocide and Atrocities Prevention Act, Savannah's Act, the Non-Invisible Act, and major COVID relief packages that expanded unemployment insurance, boosted SNAP benefits, emergency rental assistance, eviction moratorium, stimulus checks that included mixed status families, and a lot more. All of that happened under the Trump administration. So make no mistake, I think we are headed into some very dark days as a country. I'm pretty clear-eyed about that, but I strongly believe that we have a role to play and we can be effective in pushing back against some of the worst of what is coming. It's going to be hard, but we're not going to stop just because it got harder, right? The stakes are just so much bigger. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is what it looks like to live out our faith. So now we will turn to open our 4 breakout rooms. You get to select which to join. You're going to have about 20 minutes to engage with FCNL's lead staffer for that room's focus. So I want to emphasize, please keep your questions or comments for staff brief so that we can get as many people as possible to participate. And if you want to engage further and follow up, you are free to do that with FCNL staff via email. So at 3:05 Eastern time, we will come back together in the main room. We're going to hear from Bridget and Stephen, as well as get a Q&A opportunity. And then at 3:30 Eastern time, we'll reopen the breakout rooms and you can join a different room. And again, you'll have about 20 minutes with FCNL's lead staffer for that room's focus. And after that, we'll come back together for a final time and a brief closing. So the breakout room options to choose from are Native American advocacy with Rachel, nuclear disarmament and Pentagon spending with Alan, sustainable energy and environment with Darren, and our young adult programs with Tanzania. And I think Larissa is there too. And if you are unable to select a breakout room, once they open, just hang tight in that main room and we'll help you get where you need to go. So I think with that, we're ready. Becca, let's open the rooms and we'll see you back here in about 20 minutes.
You've heard from some of our lead program staff about their programs and their plans for the 119th Congress, and you're going to get one more chance to choose a breakout room to hear from another program staff. But before that session, Bridget and I want to share a bit about how you can be involved in bolstering this work. And Bridget and I have had the opportunity to travel together quite a bit and visit our donors across the country, some of you in this very room. And I want to give you, Bridget, an opportunity to share what is one lesson that you've drawn from visiting FCNL supporters.
Thanks, Stephen. There's so many lessons. Can I share two, please?
We'll allow it.
Okay, thank you. And I would say it's just an honor and a gift to get to visit with folks and supporters and advocates and people all around the country. And one of the lessons that I always feel comes through so strongly from our supporters and our whole network is the power of persistence, and that we are in this struggle for the long term, for generational change. It really is a generational struggle. And I've been thinking a lot about how we stand on the shoulders of those before us, and we try to prepare the shoulders for those who come next. And I had a moment here at the QPPI in the hotel just yesterday with Stephen. I walked out of the elevators from my room in the hotel, and I hadn't been to all the spaces yet where we had this conference set up. And I turned the corner and I was walking in. There was a big, beautiful poster of Stephen and a donor who I knew for many, many years, David Bassett. And David, I don't know if anybody knew David, but he actually passed away in 2021. But I knew him from when I was an intern 25 years ago. And I met David, and he would sit and talk to me when I was a young intern working at FCNL for the first time. And he would listen and he would advise, and he was really, really smart on foreign policy, which is what I was working on. And I knew he had passed away, but I hadn't seen this poster. And I immediately got choked up because it was a poster about his bequest gift and honoring him and his bequest to us. And that he's paying forward for the next generations, for me and the next people who will follow to support this work. And I was just so moved and touched by that. And he just had a beautiful smile, and there was his face, smiling at us to keep this work going. So that long-term generational change that we are working for together, and that is supported by people who support FCNL, is just such a gift. And the other lesson I was thinking about, and particularly at this moment, I think that we're facing, is about how our network is so committed to being the change that we want to see in the world. And I recently got to visit with Hal Weaver and Ann Nash. I don't know if folks know them, but I've known them for many years as well. Hal is the founder of the Black Quaker Project, and is just an inspiration. And he and Anne, they just live their faith. And our work on becoming anti-bias, anti-racism, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, our AJEDI work at FCNL is so important right now, that we are not just doing the work in the world, but we are working on our own transformation and being that change that we want to see. And Hal and Ann are just such incredible leaders and examples of that for me. So those are two lessons that I carry with me that people in our network of donors and supporters have shared.
I'm glad you shared those too. I carry those people with me as well. And I want to share a little bit more about some of the other FCNL supporters that have helped to make the programs that we're talking about today possible, and even a little bit of background about those programs. So one of the sessions, who went to the Native American program with Rachel Overstreet. So one of the incredible stories that I've heard since my first days at FCNL, which was in 2008, 16 years ago as a program assistant. And one of the stories I heard was that Quakers in Nebraska in the 70s donated the proceeds from a cornfield in order to fund our Native American program work. And I think about the power of that witness and the forethought to think about how we could ensure that the work continues long into the future. And it's wonderful that we are still working on these issues. Of course, many people have supported that work since, but we're thrilled to have Rachel here with us. Rachel, how long have you been at FCNL now?
I think
On
5.5 months.
5.5 months. Well, we're thrilled that you're here with us and leading this work, and we know that this is going to be a critical focus for FCNL in the next Congress. And we've already made progress in that 5.5 months, right? I hope folks, if you didn't get to go to hear Rachel speak just before this, I hope you are able to go to the next session. And then we think about another area for me where I've heard the stories over the years of the starting and the advocacy that it took to get our sustainable energy and environment program started, right? Is anybody from California? Raise your hand if you're from California. Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, the Whittier folks are raising their hands. That's great. And others I know are from California and have long been, with California friends and others, have long been at the forefront of advocating for FCNL to take a bigger role on climate issues and pushing us to include it in the priorities process. So years, and there's Keith Runyon, who's the head of Quaker Earth Care Witness. Hi, Keith. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're with us this weekend. And I bet you're coming back from a lobby visit. So welcome. And we're so grateful to be partnering with Quaker Earth Care Witness and many other organizations in our climate advocacy. So through that advocacy to put climate change on our priorities list, it has become a bigger and bigger priority over the years. And it has been incredible to see. I know for me, I've worked with one supporter in California that's their main passion. That's her main passion. And she gives to FCNL every year toward the matching challenge that we do in the spring, and has been really dedicated to that, and has been an advocate also with Citizens Climate Lobby, another organization that we work with. So the interconnections between organizations, and as FCNL supporters, that's something that you can do. Help make the connections, as Keith is doing right now, between the organizations that you're connected to and FCNL. So now I want to share a story about nuclear disarmament Pentagon spending. So Ken and Deborah Alexander, if you can raise your electronic hands, that'll put you in, everybody will see you. In 2010, I remember I was in development at FCNL, and we got this series of checks from people who'd never given to FCNL before, who gave, there you go. Hi, Ken. Hi, Deborah. We're glad you're joining us from the beach. Who had never given to FCNL before, and they gave in increments of 5280. So some version, whether it's $5.28 or $5,280, And the symbol was walking a mile in someone else's shoes. So this was a group of people that Ken and Deborah encouraged to support FCNL. They were new to Quaker Connections, new to FCNL. And Ken, I'm speaking for you, but I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. As a veteran, had experienced the waste, fraud, and abuse within the Pentagon and wanted to lobby for alternative paths forward, ways to prevent war and ways to get the Pentagon budget under control and under audited. So they encouraged their network of friends and family to support FCNL, to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. And here they are still walking with us. That was in 2010. And I don't know how many people you've inspired to give to FCNL, but I would bet it's over 100, well over 100. And it's just, to me, you led with your gift and your advocacy and your testimony, and have invited many others to join that work. And that's very inspiring to me. And finally, our young adult program. So I've had the opportunity to get to know the Wilcoxes in Colorado, Amanda and Nick Wilcox. And they spoke at our annual meeting a few years ago. And I want to share the video. Becca, if you can do that now, of their speaking. It's just a few minutes. And this is heavy, and it does involve gun violence. So if that's triggering for you, you can come back in a few minutes. That would be fine. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Okay.
Our daughter, Laura, was a sophomore at Haverford College. She was a history / political science major, very interested in public policy. I think one of her professors encouraged her to come to FCNL annual meeting, which she did. And after graduation, planned to come to Washington and be an intern at FCNL. When she was home on Christmas break, we sat down and we talked about her experience at FCNL annual meeting and how much it meant to her. It was a long Christmas break, about 3 weeks. She had worked at the behavioral health clinic in our county, our rural county, the summer before, and had really enjoyed the people there. She was asked to come back and work for a week at the end of Christmas break, which she was more than happy to do. The woman who was the receptionist at behavioral health clinic had a sick baby, and therefore Laura pitched in and was working that day as the receptionist. A client whom Laura knew came in for a scheduled appointment and drew a 9mm semi-automatic handgun and shot her at point-blank range twice in the heart. Continued shooting her after she had fallen to the ground. She died instantly, something which we are grateful for. You either crawl in a hole or you fight back, and I guess we fought back.
We got connected with the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. Gun shows were happening in Nevada County, the county we live in we live in the foothills, Sierra foothills northeast of Sacramento. It's a fairly rural county. It took 2 years, but we stopped the gun shows in Nevada County. We formed and built the Nevada County chapter of the Brady Campaign. And then in 2005, we became, as volunteer advocates, we became the lobbyists for the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. So in Sacramento, we represented the National Brady Campaign and our 22 Brady Campaign chapters, California chapters, on legislation. And we did not take this lightly. We were representing many people who had lost someone to gun violence and who, of course, cared deeply about this issue. California is a great place to be working on this issue. We've had much success. 3 far-reaching bills that we sponsored were signed into law. Change, of course, is incremental. So we still have our work for us, but we're on the right path. As Nick told you about, Laura was inspired by attending the FCNL meeting here 12 years ago. She wanted to make a positive difference in the world. We're trying to carry her torch, And one way we think we can have her torch be carried by others is to establish a fund in her name to endow an internship position at FCNL. So we've committed ourselves to raising $600,000 for this endowment. We want young people to learn and work at FCNL, learn to be lifelong advocates and activists, take the skills they learn at FCNL into their other endeavors, be it in Washington, D.C., or into the communities that they end up on. So we want Laura's goal, Laura's wishes to continue through others, and we think this is the best way to acknowledge and affirm the good work of FCNL and to remember our daughter. So thank you.
It's incredible to hear that story every time, even though I know it so well. And I'm very inspired by the way that Amanda and Nick turned tragedy into so many incredible opportunities for change. And they've advocated in California, they've advocated at the federal level, they've now live in Colorado and advocated, and they did start the Laura Wilcox Fund. In it, they raised over $600,000, and it's continued to grow and supports our program assistants today. So that is just an incredible story. And Bridget, you visited with the Wilcoxes as well. Aren't they incredible?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put into words how their witness is so moving. I have two teenagers now, and I've heard their story, and I hadn't watched that in a while. And that beauty of turning their despair into practical action for change and to supporting it through FCNL and our young adult program. I was an intern, so it's just so beautiful. And the power of their witness also is when I visit with them, they are such calm and joyful people. And I think this is part of what FCNL does. It gives us this community to ground us. And being able to be part of that and be mentored by them. They're also like amazing lobbyists, like really incredibly strategic, awesome relationship-based lobbyists. So yeah, they are just incredible people. We are so fortunate to have them among us. And they teach us to never give up, right? They teach us that we can always turn the most difficult things into something else. And that's what we're doing right now. That's what the kind of moment we are in right now. We are all grappling with how do we turn the moment and the challenges and the sadness and the anger and all those feelings we're going through right now into positive change. And I have been so inspired today. I went on some lobby visits with our folks. I saw Senator Murkowski's staff. If anybody's out there from Alaska, I dropped by the Ohio senators' offices. Tried to. J.D. Vance is not letting people into their office, but with one of our young adult leaders, Garrett Simmons. And so I had this really great day of people turning this moment into action with FCNL. And so we're so grateful for all the support that everyone in this community offers us. Financial support, spiritual support, the advocacy that you're persisting in with us. And we are now called to do more. As Amelia was saying at the start of this call, we've got a big uphill ahead of us. E. Raymond Wilson's book is called Uphill for Peace. And we got a big hill in front of us, and we're going to keep climbing it. And we also know that's going to take more resources. It's going to take more support, more perseverance. So we have an opportunity for you today, and you're the first group to hear about this. We'll be announcing it more at Quaker Public Policy Institute and annual meeting throughout the next days. But we are going to start the 119th Congress off strong. So we're looking for 119 people who, in the course of the next few days, before we finish this meetings, would make a gift, would donate to FCNL today to help fortify us and prepare us for that uphill journey of the 119th Congress that's coming. So you have this opportunity. We welcome, we invite, we are so grateful for all that you do for us already. I think there's a link in the chat for where you can go if you feel inspired to give and become one of the first 119 people to start us off in the 119th Congress strong.
We are certainly going to need that strength. We know that. We are going to need more financial resources. We're going to need more advocacy. We're going to need more of your spiritual support. And Bridget, I wonder if you could share just what is giving you hope right now.
Yeah, well, all the lobbying that is happening right now, watching Keith walk back from his lobby visit right now is giving me hope and inspiration. And I really have been thinking about, you know, that idea of the moral arc of history, and that it does still bend toward justice. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. taught us that. So many people in this community teach us that. And we have to keep helping bend it. We have to be the guardrails. Amelia said, and we're talking about, you know, oh, there are no guardrails. We're the guardrails. And that gives me hope knowing that I'm in community with so many people here to support one another, to work and be the light. As Amanda Gorman said, there's always light if we're brave enough to see it, if we're brave enough to be it. And so I'm really gaining the energy and the support just through these days together with you all online, with friends who are here. And I know that we're going to keep acting for hope because that's what we do.
Amen. We do. And we have time for one or two questions. I see Connie's. Thank you, Connie, for your message about your El Paso meeting, deciding this past Sunday to increase the donation to FCNL. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Sue Ellen, you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question or
Well,
make a
there's an
comment?
important question in the chat.
Okay. Does it
and
matter
it
whether
has to
okay.
do with what part of FCNL is it most important right now as we face 119th Congress to donate to? I think that's an important one to answer.
Thank you for lifting that. I missed Sandy's question, and the urgent need for this organization and in this Congress is lobbying. We are so unique in having the lobbying ability, capacity, staff, the people that you've met today and this weekend, and we need to be able to pay for them. And it costs a lot of money to lobby, and we don't have the long-term financial resources we need to ensure that our lobbying is strong for the long term. So that is a huge question. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Sue Ellen, for bringing it up again. That is, go ahead.
Stephen, I just want to make sure you're watching the chat because people are already donating $119 to lobby the 119th Congress. And
I love that.
Rosemary's gonna bring the question forward to her right sharing working group and the Peace and Social Concerns Committee. This is amazing. Thank you, friends.
Thank you. Thank you. And Sandy, over to you.
Yeah, just to be clear, Stephen, you're telling us that the donation should go to the not tax exempt side of the business.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
If you can give to the C4 lobbying not tax exempt, that is where it's needed most. There are a couple of vehicles giving vehicles that only give to the education fund. You can write to me, ask me. My email's Stephen@FCNL. I'll put it in the chat. But yes, the greatest need is toward the C4. I love this. I hadn't even thought that somebody might think of giving $119. That is such a good idea. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and people are donating right now. This is so thrilling. Okay, we have time for one more question or a comment. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Sharon and Sue Ellen.
Karen Greenler here.
Hi,
My
Karen. Hi, Penny.
is if you send the donation to FCNL and do not designate the education fund, it goes to the lobbying side. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. The default for us is lobbying. So
Can I just say, I think the online community is setting a pretty high bar that we can go back and report to folks here how amazing this was, that people just started pouring in the gifts already. We're gonna get 119 gifts. I know it. Thank you all so much.
it does make a huge difference to have this so early on in the meeting too. Because I hope you all are joining for the rest of the weekend and zooming into sessions, because we've got a lot in store. But gosh, we are so strong. I just got a message from my colleague here in the development department. 14 gifts so far already out of the 119, and we just announced it. So that's amazing. We have time for one more question if anybody has one before we go to the breakout rooms. I see some clapping. Rick, thank you. All right. Oh, I see some donating. Gosh, this is thrilling. All right. Well, we will let you go to the breakout rooms to hear from your next policy person or program lead. So it's the same choices. You get to choose. You could, if you are in desperate need to hear from the same person again, that's fine, but I encourage you to choose a different program lead. And Becca, if you want to open the breakout rooms.
And could you review what they are again?
Recording. Excellent. How were your breakout rooms? Reactions? I see some thumbs up. Excellent. Thank you, Rick. This is excellent. Feel free to put in the chat how your breakout rooms were. We are so grateful. Larry, I see you.
Yeah, it turned my despair into despondency.
Oh. Okay, well, can't win them all.
Step forward. At least it's not a step back. I think it's a small step forward.
I think it's a step forward. We'll count it. We're all on a journey here. It's a challenging journey we're on, but it is one that we are on together. And that is a big part of our message this weekend. Advocacy that never gives up. And I checked with Amelia to make sure that a bunch of you didn't hear her story this morning, because Amelia talked about a long run that she did. I'm going to share a story about a slightly shorter run that I did of 16 miles. And I am kind of a fair weather runner. I love running. It's good for my spiritual practice, and it's very important for me in terms of getting outside of my head and outside of my office. And I went running the other day on a Sunday, and I kind of forgot that it gets dark late or early. This was after daylight savings time. And so I left, and I had my route kind of planned out, and I knew where the bathrooms were, which was great. And I thought, okay, I'll run out and then run back, and it'll be 16 miles, and that'll be awesome. And I started getting out there, and the first bathroom was closed. And I thought, uh-oh, this is not good. And then it started getting dark, and I thought, oh no, I don't like running in the dark. I'm not a brave runner, I would say, probably not. So, and then I really had to go to the bathroom, number 2, and it was very terrible. That is my nightmare when running, is that I am gonna have to go number 2 on the trail. And I had to, and it was awful. I do not recommend that. And then it gets really dark, and I'm not a dark, being outside in the dark person. That's not me. And I was alone on the trail, and I thought, okay, so I started getting nervous, and I'm like, okay, wow, this is really rough. So I started to turn back, and as soon as I did, it started raining. So it's raining and dark, and it was just all of the things coming together that make running hard for me. And I thought, no, I am building endurance for the next 4 years, the marathon that is to come. And I am going to get through this. And I did. And I was running back on the mall, the National Mall, by the Washington Monument. And I looked up and the lights that go onto the Washington Monument were lit. And I looked up and the rain was just coming down in sheets of rain. And it was stunningly beautiful. I took a photo, but it didn't do it justice to see the rain and the lights. And for me, it was a reminder that there is beauty in this moment, even when you're cold and uncomfortable and Trump's policies are really getting it down. And Matt Gaetz has been nominated to the Attorney General, that there's still beauty in these moments. And the other thing that happened just about a few minutes later, I was running and by this time I was very tired and I was about to go up the hill of Capitol Hill on my way home. And this guy ran by on the other side. And, you know, I tend to, I don't know if you would be surprised by this, but I'm a little friendly when I run and just in general. And I said, I waved and he said, like, we got this. We got this. He didn't say we got this, but the message was there for me. It was like we got this, moment. And, with a stranger, it was so encouraging to me because we do have this. We can get from the despondency that Larry expressed to the stick-to-itiveness, the absolute endurance for the marathon ahead. It is going to be a marathon, right? This is not an easy 4 years to come. And it's going to get worse than before it gets better. But we are together in community. And I think that is the most powerful thing, is this community of supporters. You've heard some stories of people in this space. You've heard some stories of people that have passed on, whose shoulders we are standing on. You have expressed your own support for FCNL through your donations, through your advocacy, through your spiritual support. You have shown up, right? To say, we are not giving up. This is advocacy that never gives up. Absolutely never. And I just am astonished by that over and over and over again. And Bridget mentioned that we've gotten so many messages from our network, from you all across the country since the election, and messages of encouragement and people saying, we want to support you. And I want to end with one message from that. So Carol, who's somebody I've gotten to know over the years, said, "Dear Bridget and all of FCNL, thank you so much for the beautiful quote and letter to all of us who've worked and hoped for a very different outcome of these elections. I agree and will never give up working for the world we love and know we can be a just and loving home for all. Thank you all for the work you do. I will send as much support as I can as you do the work for all of us. Gratefully, Carol." You are joining that. You've joined it already. You've joined Carol and FCNL and all the staff that you've gotten to know. You've joined each other. You have another opportunity. 4 more minutes before we close out this session. We're trying to get to 119 donors to help make 119 Congress strong. And I know some of you have already donated. Let's see, who else? Deborah says, did we get to 119? Kelsey, 17 gifts so far, which is fantastic. And we are going to be working toward that goal all weekend long. So feel free to tell your friends. This is an opportunity to donate to FCNL. If you could put it in the chat, there it is. It's in the chat. I'm going to heart it so it shows up again for all of you. So you can donate there. You can tell your friends, and I see other people are stepping forward to make a donation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for all the ways that you are FCNL. The stream of FCNL is wide and it's deep, and we're moving forward, baby. We are moving forward together. So thank you. We have a few more minutes, and I think it'd be great if we could just, I would love to hear from, I see Rich and Marion said they're going to donate. Carol, thank you. You raised your hand. You want to share something?
Yes, I did. The lovely thing to think about too is that it's not just that we have this wonderful community within FCNL. Last night I was on a webinar with Indivisible, and there were over 20,000 people on the call, with many, many more who had registered who couldn't make it. Elizabeth Warren spoke, Ezra Levin, who ran it. There were so many hearts floating up. You almost couldn't see his face through the whole hour-long thing. People were charged. We're like, we are not giving up. And the only way fascism happens is if we allow it. Little by little, we give up our power. That was the big message last night. So I'm not
Amen.
encouraging y'all to join Indivisible instead of FCNL, but we are not alone. We have many, many, many people, even outside of our network.
Thank you, Carol. That's a wonderful reminder. And Elizabeth Warren, or Elizabeth Beavers, is one of FCNL's most illustrious alumni. She was a program assistant at FCNL. That's where she got her start. I want to thank you all again for all of your encouragement, all your love. Let's send those hearts. If you've got those hearts, if you can do the reactions, send hearts. As we hold each other in the light over the next few days of annual meeting, that we will join together in love and light for justice, for the next group of work together. And I'm so encouraged. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
See you later, and please join the sessions this evening. We look forward to seeing you there. Hearts all around. Megan, did you have a comment as we're heading out? Oh, okay.
I may
Thank you,
have to
thank
miss
you,
the
folks.
evening sessions just because they're